We are here to learn Even Ezer Samach Bet Seif Aleph. Because that's what we did in class. Be'iyun for sure, but that was so maybe I'll start maybe by reading the Shulchan Aruch, and then I've got a bunch of Nosei Kalim to take a look at, if that's okay, the ones that we didn't look at in class, but we'll review the Shulchan Aruch first. All right. So Sarich levarech berkat chatanim beveta chatan. All right. Kodem nisuin. So, right, you need to make this blessing of berkat chatanim, which we don't know what it is yet, or we do, but we don't. In the house of the chatan, right, that itself isn't a loaded term, which got talked about a lot in class. And in some, I'll just say in some formulations is like renting out the wedding hall, right? Kodem nisuin, before, and it has to be before nisuin according to Shulchan Aruch, right? So that's a machloket too. Vehen sheish berachot, right? And those are the 6 blessings, right? Or they are 6 blessings. Ve'im yesh sham yain, mevi kos yain umevarech al hayain techila, right? And so if you have wine, then you should bring the cup of wine. You should bless on the wine first. Umesader kulam ala kos, and you should organize them all on the cup. Ve'nim sam mevarech sheva berachot. So then it ends up with 7. V'im en yain matzui mevarech ala shechar, right? And if you don't have wine, you should bless on beer. And there was a whole thing in class. I just want to say this, right? Where there was a discussion of, well, is the Shulchan Aruch ruling that you have to bless on shechar? Or is it like, does he think that if you don't have anything, you shouldn't? And I'm almost reading him as in his world, maybe shechar is just very easily found, and it's like not even a question. And I think actually this is kind of interesting of like the sense of, in their world there was an alcoholic beverage available, right? Some sort of Chamra Medina everywhere, because otherwise you just didn't have water, I don't think, in general. So I don't know, maybe someone else has a different opinion on this, but Alan, you look like you want to say something.
I was just reading a Chaim Soloveitchik article, and he says that in medieval Germany, the average peasant drank something like 17 liters of wine a week.
Yeah.
He said people just drank it with every meal in place. Like they didn't have running water, so like wine was easier to keep.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I assuming that shechar means beer to him, which I assume it does. Like that was really common. I think beer they always had beer available. So
I meant beer, not wine.
You meant beer for the leaders. Yeah. So yeah, they drank a lot of beer. This, by the way, as a quick side note, because I've been teaching the 10th parak of Sachim, right? The idea of wine as an organizing principle, I think, actually helps with the Tosfot's problem there of like why wine, whether or not you do haseba, is based on where it is in the Seder versus like matzah and maror is based on what they symbolize. Because wine doesn't symbolize anything on Pesach; it's an organizing principle. It's there. The first cup is for kiddush. The second cup is for tzipor yetziat mitzrayim, right? The third cup is for Hallel, and the fourth cup is for Birkat Hamazon, right? And really, so in that case, also the Seder only has 2 more cups than usual, right? Because a normal Shabbat would have 2 cups, right, for Kiddush and 1 for Birkat Hamazon, and that also, right, organizes the meal in some ways. So, all right, I said my piece. My drash is done. One more thing I just want to say, because I was yelling this when I was watching the recording. I yell at the recording sometimes when I watch it, and there's a whole thing about, is this a Birkat Mitzvah? Or not, and therefore it needs to be done over lasiyatan or lasiyah, and then like people are trying to figure out how the Rambam could potentially say it's a bracha, birkat mitzvah, but then later on say that if you didn't do it ahead of time, you can do it afterwards. I need to look, but let's be honest. If you put on your tefillin and you don't say a bracha for whatever reason, your tefillin shows up to you at a place you can't interrupt in davening, right? You put it on before Zman Shiaki or whatever it is before time to bracha. You can then later on, as your tefillin is on, you can make the bracha, and then you move the tefillin a little bit, or your tzitzit, right? Same thing. If you get up early in the morning, you put on your talit katan, before this happens a lot in Michigan this time of year, before the sun is up enough, then you later on you say the bracha, or you put on the talit gadol later with that in mind. But so I don't know. I think it's not crazy to think like if you forgot it, like you're still in like the for kama yamim, as the Rambam says, you're still at least in that week, right, or more. You're still like in that process, and so you make the bracha. So that's my argument for why it still could be a Birkat mitzvah. All right, I've said my piece, but I got it out because I needed to yell. All right, with that, let's take a look at the Ber Hetev first on Samach Bet, starting with Nisuin. This is where he says, right, you need to do the brachot kodem Nisuin, right? So let's see, Alan, you're eating, so I'm going to put Yavne on first.
I'm good.
Go for it. All right, Alan wants to volunteer to go first. Go for it. Nisuin Ber Hetev.
Okay, Nisuin. Lodinan osim chuppah nida eino tzarich lakdim brachot lechuppah. All right. According to our opinion, we do a chuppah nida. It's not necessary to say the brachot before chuppah.
Good. And just remind us, whose opinion is it that comes down really that that you can do chuppah nida?
That is the Rosh, right?
It's the Rosh, but there's someone before him actually who does it. It's the Ran. The Ran also.
The Rosh is before the Ran.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'm going to take that back. Is he? No. The Ran's first, right? Yeah, Ran's first.
No,
so.
Is he?
Yeah. So.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's well, if you think about it, it has to be, right? Because the Torah quotes the Ran all the time, and the Torah is one generation after the Rosh. So either the Torah is contemporary with the Ran, right? Or the Rosh is at least contemporary with the Ran, if not before.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay.
My logical deduction for the day. Okay, great. So that's the Ran's opinion.
Okay. Was it Derech Moshe?
Yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Again, but
I'm not sure who that is, but the other one's Beit Shmuel.
Beit Shmuel.
Yeah. So.
Right. So we actually did Berachat Eretz and Nisuin under the chuppah. Check out. Mechayev lamed kol amdim sham al regleihem bishat bracha sheva brachot. Berachat sheva brachot kana shalosh.
Oh no, I that's Knesset Hagdolah. That's who says that. So yeah.
I was looking at the Al Torah, which is more partly. Okay. Right. Bishop, you should stand on. Everyone who's around should stand on their feet at the time.
Exactly. It's a little bit weird writing, right? It's like la mod kol ha-omdim sham, right? But the second omdim doesn't mean standing on their feet. It means the people who are there at the wedding should stand up for Sheva Brachot. So I didn't look at the Knesset Hagdolah to see why he says that, but he does say that. So this is, by the way, a deeper thing that I've never looked into, but a whole question of like, why do we stand, aside from the Amidah, which makes some sense, you're standing before Hashem and so forth, why we stand certain places in davening, I don't know the answer to. But I do know that the Gra thinks that for all of Pesukei Zimra, you should sit. And I think part of that I've never looked into it, but part of it might be that the Gra thinks that really you're only supposed to stand for the Amidah, and the rest of it is supposed to be done seated. So, anyway, okay.
So, Birkat Chatanim in Lahem Seder, Umisha Chazar Mehena Mevarachota Zocher Igor the Rambam.
Right.
Okay. There's no order, and if you forgot one of them, you can go back.
Great. And like a really interesting question then, though, like remember, because starting from bracha 3 until 3 through 5, right? 3, 4, 5 are 3 starts with Baruch and 4 and 5 don't. Right. So 4 is Sos Tasis, 5 is Sameach Tesamach, right? Because they're relying on 3. Remember, we had that whole thing in the Rashi that it was, that's really when the order begins. And so it's like, I didn't look, but it seems a little weird to me that you could do those out of order, because those rely on being connected to the previous bracha. So Asher Bara rather. I understand that one being out of order, and I understand because that one also lives on its own kind of, and I understand the first 2 being out of order, but or forgetting it. But that seems weird to me. But just so you know, here's the Ber Hetev who says you can do, or he's quoting the Igrota Rambam, right, with a pretty big source there that you can do this. So,
right. But I am b'marik shorish kufin hatam lama she'eino mevarach shechianu. Okay, so there's some reason why you can't say shechianu.
Great.
check there. Katan pachot min 13 שנים, שנשא אישה, אם מברכים ברכת נישואין, somewhere else.
Ayin el siman lamedalad. Yeah. So sifkatan tet. Okay. Keep going.
כנסת הגדולה, לפי מה שנוהגים, עושים חופת נידה, מברכים 7 ברכות, אם כן, פשיטא דמברכים בקטן, שנשא אישה, אין שם. Okay, so he thinks that since we do say brachot over chupat nida, definitely we say sheva brachot for katan. It's obvious. He's not would be either, but there's no reason why.
So great. So I don't believe these were. I found these kind of interesting issues that he brings up here that we didn't talk about so far. So, okay, good. That's all Ber Hetev Aleph. Yavni, you want to take the next two Perushay Ber Hetev?
Oh, sure. But I also want to say, at least in Wikipedia, it says that the Rosh was from 1250 to 1327, and the Ran was from 1315 to 1376. So they
I was wrong.
overlapped, but the
Ran's first.
the
Rosh is first, rather. Sorry.
Right.
Okay, so maybe it's the Rosh's opinion first, and then the Ran. I apologize.
To you whether when I don't know 100%. Thank you.
So, that's good. And thank you for pursuing that and keeping me honest. So that's
Sure.
all right. The next
Hayayin.
Yeah, is that you're supposed to do it all, if you have a kos shel yayin, you should bring the yayin. So go for it.
ומקדימים ברכת בורא פרי הגפן, ואחר כך 6 ברכות. אבל בברכת המזון מברכים 6 ברכות, ואחר כך בורא פרי הגפן. ברוך אתה השם.
Oh no, I think it's a source. I don't remember who it is. Yeah. But good. And do you remember the reason? Maybe it was a Chakat Mechokek gives the reason why you switched around Berkat Hamazon?
It's because if you do the Borei Pri Hagafen first, then it's like it closes off the whole thing, and then you don't have something like that. There's
exactly. It makes it feel like the Sheish Barachot are no longer part of benching, right? It's not. Right. And because you say Borei Pri Hagafen, benching's over, and then also you say these brachot, and so therefore we say it at the end, which also even emphasizes more the wine as the organizing principle, right? It's like it has to bracket it, and so for under the chuppah, it brackets it by starting it, but at the end of a meal, it brackets it by end because the Birkat Hamazon is the end, so it should come at the end. So I do wonder, as like another side note, the whole debate between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai about whether or not you do you mevarach al hayom or mevarach al yayin first is this whole question. I haven't thought it through yet though. So, but for someone to make a drasha at the Pesach Seder, anyway, okay, good. Do the next one too. Al Shechar.
על השחר, ואם אין שחר מצוי, יברך בלא כוס. כך משמע מרמב"ם, פרק י' מהלכות אישות, אבל הראש והטור כתבו דלא סגי בלא כוס. That's a machloket. We saw that the Rambam says that if you don't have any alcoholic beverage, then you can still do it without a cup, and the Rosh and the Tur say that you can't.
Great.
it goes on. Sorry. נוהגים לקרוא את הכתובה בין ברכת אירוסין לברכת נישואין, כדי להפסיק קצת משום ברכת היין, שמברכים עוד פעם אחרת על כוס של נישואין. Maram means Maran means.
Yeah.
Should I translate that?
Yeah, great.
So we have a practice of reading the ketubah between the bracha for kiddushin and the bracha and the shesh brachot for nisuin, because we do each of them on a cup, and so we separate them.
Great. It's and I think part of the underlying thing there is, like, if you said Borei Pri Hagafen on Erosin, right, you may not need to say Borei Pri Hagafen again on the cup, right. And you need some sort of hefsek. And so you read the ketubah. It's funny because I always learned that,
Assuming it's the same person doing it.
Anyway, It is the same person doing it. Yeah, usually.
Okay.
I mean, theoretically, right? The way remember we saw this also. This other good chazarah, right? Who's supposed to do Birkat Erusin?
Someone else.
Okay, outside of before the Ramah, originally, Meikar Hadid was supposed to do it.
The Chatan.
The Chatan, right? And the reason why we don't is because people are embarrassed. They don't know it, right? We don't want to embarrass anybody.
Right.
But so theoretically, we haven't said who does Sheva Brachot, but it seems like it could be somebody, or should be somebody else potentially. And so there it might be different people. But I think you're right. He's operating in a world already where there's a Mesader Kiddushin who's doing both of them. So, okay, great. I keep going.
וכך כתב הרמה, סימן זה,
Sif Tet, I think.
סעיף ט'.
Yeah.
ובקושטנטין.
Yeah. By the way, the shin is almost always the shin.
What?
I think it's Constantinople, right?
Constantinople, right? That was my guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
בקונסטנטינופל נוהגים לקרוא את הכתובה קודם ברכת אירוסין. ומפסיקין בקידושין בין ברכת אירוסין לנישואין כנסת הגדולה. Okay, so in Constantinople, they have a practice of reading the ketubah before the kiddushin, before the birkat irusin, and then they stop with the kiddushin between the just doing the kiddushin is considered the hefsek between the birkat kiddushin and the.
That's how I understood him. Yeah, is that what is it you do as a hefsek? You do kiddushin, right? Like that seems like a pretty big hefsek. So so it's pretty quick hefsek, but it seems like your diet is no longer on the glass of wine at that point. So
right.
And if you think about it, right, we do, right, you do Bor Briagafen, you do Birkat Erusin, you drink the wine, and then you do Kiddushin. So,
right.
Okay. And keep going.
אם ברך ברכת חתנים קודם ברכת אירוסין, חוזר ומברך ברכת חתנים אחר ברכת אירוסין.
Harem, yeah.
Harem, חלק א'. So if you made a mistake and did the Sheva Brachot before doing the Birkat Irusin, then you have to do them again afterward. ומדברי ריבש, סימן פרק ב', נראה...
I think it's, by the way, it's just Siman Peibet. It's probably
סימן פ"ב. Thank you. נראה דאין צריך לחזור ולברך ברכת חתנים, but there's someone says otherwise.
Exactly. Well, the Rivash, yeah. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we discussed the case of someone doing a Kedusha Ta'ud. They don't have to go back and say the Sheva Brachot again.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I forget who brought that dad, but
was that in the Rambam?
It might have been. I don't remember. So
not sure.
But here it seems like the Sheva Brachot are enough of a necessity that you should go back and do them again. Maybe if you're on the spot, it's a little bit easier to just go right back through them. But
it's a good question about where they are in this case, in terms of the order, like, are they doing them together? And that's what happened. They're like, oh, we started Sheva Brachot first. And, but by the way, I didn't think about this, but actually a very close friend of mine, I was an aide for Kiddushin at her wedding, and the Mesader Kiddushin messed up and he forgot to bring the eidim up. He just kind of like it was even nervous. He was the father of the bride. I think he was just kind of, but and so we went back and did Kiddushin again after, right, they finished Nisuin. And I didn't think at the time, I didn't think about Birkat Chatanim, but that would apply there, right? The whole question of if it was Kiddushay Ta'ut and you have to go back and do them again, whether or not you need to go back and do Birkat Chatanim again. So
also, that's a problematic opinion for those who say that you should do the Birkat Chatanim before going into the chuppah and who do the Kiddushin under the chuppah.
Yes, also great. Yeah, and we saw that, right? Because this was a whole debate that was playing out in class on Monday, right? It was the whole question of Rashi says Misha nichnasu lechupa or Misha lebeit. I don't remember what he says exactly, and the Ram says no before, right? And so it's a question of, can you do it? Does it have to be done before, or can be done as it's being done, or after when you're already under the chuppah? And also, right, that whole thing comes also the question of what actually is chuppah, right? Is chuppah the canopy? Is chuppah the yichud? Is it just sitting in some sort of makom snua? I also want to make, as a few, this is my share, I get to make pitches, right? My own personal experiences, like there is something really incredible about, like this was for me personally, at least, about like right after the wedding, going to yichud and having food there and sharing food. Like that it's like the first time you kind of get away from everybody. But also Rachel and I, when we were at the reception, we had our own table and we weren't there very often. We were up dancing a lot. In fact, we barely ate there. But when we were there, we were kind of away from everybody. We're just kind of like watching. And it was kind of in some ways a makom snua, right? We had some kind of privacy there, in that sense. So I was thinking about all those terms kind of coming to play of how they actually play out on a wedding, and when did nisuin happen? So, but okay, good. How are we doing on time? All right, let us, Alan. Let's go to the Pitchei Tshuva. Let's do Aleph. That you should do it bevet hechatan kodem nisuin. You should do birkat nisuin.
בבית החתן קודם נישואין. עם בית שמואל שכתב, ומה שאנו מברכים ברכת נישואין תחת החופה, משום בחופה ליקה ייחוד, והווה עובר לעשייה, קודם שאוכלים ביחד, במקום צנוע. So Beit Shmuel says that which we do, saying birkat nisuim under the chuppah, is because chuppah is not yichud, and so therefore we were saying the bracha before the action, i.e. before we eat together, and before the couple eats together in a secluded place.
Great.
Good.
Yeah, great.
זה גם כן ראיה, דעיקר החופה הוא האכילה במקום צנוע, אם לא כן קשה על מנהג שלנו. איך עושים שני דברים הסותרים זה על זה? בברכת ערסים מברכים קודם קידושין, כדי שיהיה עובר לעשייתן, ובברכת נישואין מברכים תחת החופה. כאן לשונה. We saw this in the Beit Shmuel itself, right?
Exactly.
There's a proof. Right. So there's a proof also from this that the essence of chuppah is the eating in a secluded place. As the Aruch HaShulchan also argues, right? That because if it weren't the case, there would be a difficulty with our minhag. How can we do two that contradict each other?
Yeah.
Because Birkat Eresim we say before Kiddushin in order that it's over l'siyatan. Birkat Nisuim we're saying it under the chuppah at the time, seemingly at the time that the mitzvah is already taking place. So it would. If you're going to argue that nisuin is yichud is chuppah, which is nisuin, then it would no longer be over l'siyatan. Therefore, it must be the chuppah cannot be yichud.
Yeah, this is, by the way, only according to the people. If you live in a world where you don't, you do it this way, but you hold that it has to be done over l'siyah, right? Then you have to kind of come up with like, well, really under the chuppah must not be nisuin, right? And something else right afterwards must be nisuin. So, but he's going to get into this. I think this is the place where I found very interesting. So keep going. Okay. Yeah, whatever it is, I don't know what the sefer is, but
the שכתב זה אי אפשר לומר כן. דאילו הווה ברכת נישואין בשביל הייחוד, שאחר כך הווה ההליכה מהחופה לבית החתונה הפסק בין הברכה לנישואין.
כדאיתא.
Okay, right.
כדאיתא באורח חיים סימן.
Right, so in the Shulchan Aruch itself. Okay, so just to get that down, the Sefer Makana, whoever this is, says that it's impossible to say, to make the above argument that chuppah is not yichud, and we're saying the brachot over l'siyatan of the act of eating together. Because we said that because Birkat Niswain was for the sake of the yichud that happens later. Actually, the process of going from the chuppah to the wedding house would be an interruption between the bracha and Niswain.
Great.
So it's not actually over the Seitan.
Yeah, I was thinking about this just like my own wedding. Is that I mean, we did run to the yichud room. I remember that, but it was no, but I mean, like even though you do, birkat chatanim right beforehand, at least in weddings nowadays, not only is there the time of walking, but we have an extra thing, right, that we add now is that a lot of people sing Imesh Kachech Yerushalayim, and then they break the glass, right? There's actually a lot that goes on between, I don't know if that's a lot. There is something that goes on between doing birkat chatanim and actually going to yichud, and although more alachat kama v'chama to eating together, by the time you actually get the food, and I think I can't remember for us personally, but I know other ones have done. It's like you try to get the food in there ahead of time, but it's not always there, and someone has to bring it, and so forth. So okay, good. So keep going.
Yeah. So Masha כתב הרמב"ם והטור כתבו קודם כניסתן לחופה, היינו בבית החתונה קודם כניסתן לחדר המיוחד לחתן וכלה. מחדר לחדר לא הווה הפסיק, כדאיתא מגן אברהם שם.
So Sif Katan Yud Zayin. So this is, by the way, I found interesting also personally, because I know in class we're talking about like, well, how did it work? Were people sitting out on the street? He's going to get into this, right? But here's his first thing is like, they're going from one room where it seems to be like in the Rambam and the Torah, the way he's imagining it is they're all in the house of the Chatan. The Chatan and Kala, they say the Sheva Brachot, and then the Chatan and Kala go into a different room in the house immediately. They go to the next door room and they have Yichud together, kind of thing. So,
so there would be no hafsek there.
Exactly, right? They lock the door, essentially, okay.
Okay, Ella, nireh, דכיוון דמנהגנו לקדש תחת החופה, אם כן, אי אפשר לברך ברכת נישואין קודם כניסתן לחופה, כיוון דעדיין לא קידשה. יהא ברכת אירוסין וקידושין הפסק בין ברכת נישואין לנישואין. וגם עדיין לא נקראו בשם חתן וכלה קודם הנישואין.
הקידושין.
קודם הקידושין.
Yeah.
Okay, so like sorry.
I think I'll Ken.
Sorry. Okay, mevarchin techef achar hakiddushin. There you go. This is still the peak. Who is the peak that you were quoting here at the last track?
I don't remember who it was, but yeah, I think it's still the same.
Right.
So
The Sefer Hamakana, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So it seems that since our custom is to bless under the chuppah, if so, it's impossible to do Birkat Nizuin before entering Knisat and the chuppah because she still hasn't been betrothed yet. And it would Birkat Erusin and Kiddushin would be a hefsek between two parts of Nizuin.
Exactly.
Right, and they're still not called bride and groom yet. How could you can't say blessings?
Yeah.
So therefore, you have to bless immediately after Kiddushin.
Exactly. So, which by the way, that brings that sounds like you can't do a drush. You can't do a ketubah reading or a drasha in between the two things, right? In that version, it's like, right, because I think he's saying, maybe you have a look on your face, and maybe you'll correct me here, but right, it's like you can't do it ahead of if the canopy is the actual nisuin, right? You can't do it before they enter because they haven't done erosin yet. But once they've done erosin, you have to immediately do the brachot, right, as soon as you possibly can. And so therefore it's like he puts the ring on her finger, everyone yells mekudeshet or whatever, maybe only the 18 yom mekudeshet, whatever it may be, and then you should immediately go into sheva brachot. So
are we saying that for the Sefer Mekana the chuppah is actually nisuin?
I think he's suggesting, because he said, well, it can't be that they're going eating together or makom snua is that, because then there's clearly a hefsek. Right, he's essentially going backwards. He's like, we must bless it before we actually do nisuin. Right, so it's quite a game. A deductive game he's playing here. Right, he's like, when does nisuin happen? Well, we know we say the brachot at this point. We know that brachot have to be, before the actual asiyah, And we know that they can't be too long before the asiyah either, right? So he's like, well, what fits into that category? And so this is what he's come up with. It seems to be that it is, and the reason we don't do it before the chuppah is because, well, before they get in the chuppah, they actually haven't done erusin, and therefore, right? Which, by the way, you could get out of this. You could do erusin like in front of the chuppah potentially, and then go under it or something like that. I don't know. It's but I think if we did that, everyone would look and say like that's not a wedding, right? What are you doing? But anyway, he's going to keep going though with it. So keep going a little bit more. I'm giving you a long Pitrei Tshuva to do here.
מה שנוהגים אף באלמנה כן, ואף באלמנה כן, אף באלמנה אין החופה קונה, אלא ייחוד. אפשר כמובן.
And that's you can skip the parenthetical. Go just take it.
צריך לומר, אפילו הכי לא הווה ההליכה הפסק, משום דכבר התחיל החופה, אלא שאינה נגמרת לקנות עד הייחוד. Okay, so there's our teretz there, right?
Good. So give me what's that answer? You don't have to translate it. Just what is that answer?
Right. It's just that the process of chuppah continues for a little while, and so all the way past the going from the bride towards the groom's house. That's all part of the chuppah process, and so therefore we can say it is still, the bracha is still over l'siatan.
So I think Rav Landis said, or maybe Rav Nachum said this at some point, but right, chuppah or nisuin is not a point in time, right? It's a process, and so we're over the process, and not lasi. There's no asiyah in that sense, or there's several steps of asiyah, so yeah, you have to go up the ladder a little bit to get there. So great. Keep going.
Okay. וכל שכן,
וכל שכן, וכל שכן.
לפי מנהג אשכנז, שנוהגים אחר החופה ברחוב, מיד. וכשבאים לבית עושים סעודה ומברכים שבע ברכות קודם הייחוד. על כן צריך לומר, תסביר לעיקר החופה מה שעושים ברחוב. אם לא אחי, שייך לברך שתי פעמים שבע ברכות קודם החופה.
Great, right? So what's the problem with this custom? This gives us like a nice insight into how they did it in Ashkenaz too, right?
Right. So they used to do after chuppah in the streets, they would do it right away. Then they would do it again. They would have a meal at the house and say Sheva Bracha before Yichud. So it must be that they thought that the chuppah is what's happening in the street.
Yeah, I think it was like they had a chuppah in the street. They would do Sheva Brachot on the chuppah, then they would immediately go to a meal in the house, and then Yichud would happen after the meal, right? I think you were saying this, but I just want to clarify this, right? And so at that point, they've done Sheva Brachot twice, right? And so if Yichud is the actual asiyah, well, then you've done Sheva Brachot 2 times before the asiyah. You can't do that. So it must not be. So it must be the chuppah and the rechov is enough, like that's actually maybe chuppah at the end of the day. So, all right. Another mihu though. He's not done.
מיהו, מה שנוגן כן, אף באלמנה צריכים, ונכון לעשות את הדבר, קודם הסעודה. עד כאן, forever.
I thought that's what he solved in the last point.
Yeah, I thought he did too. Well, I think he's dealing with this. Well, no, I think he's dealing with a. I think what he's saying that we also do this with the almanah, right, where we don't do yichud. Yeah, so he's saying in our world, for whether she's a betula or an almanah, right, we do chuppah in the street, we go have a meal, and then they do yichud. And for an almanah, we know that there it has to be yichud, right? It's nothing else. And there, what was that?
Go ahead. Yeah.
And so therefore, so for betula, we can solve it and we can claim, the chuppah in the street, that was nisuin. And that's why we can do Sheva Brachot during that. And then we can do Sheva Brachot again at the meal, right? But for the almanah, if we do the meal first and we haven't done yichud yet, she for sure hasn't done nisuin.
No, but I thought his tirutz was we do it over l'asiyah because that's when the nisuin starts. And then the nisuin itself, and then what he was saying was that the almanah, the nisuin isn't completed until yichud.
Yes, yeah, but I think for the almanat, it's not completed yet, and so you've done the bracha twice before the completion of the.
But how is that different from the objection, the
Oh,
kushya I was bringing in
the
previously?
one before was just the because that was about the hefsek, right?
Right.
Right. Here it's not about the hefsek.
Oh, here it's about why we do Sheva Brachot again before the
Exactly.
Nisuin are completed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's got two kashiot based on the almanah, and this one is just like sarich iyun. Right. We do it anyway. It sounds like, and so good. Okay, how are we doing on time? Oh, we've got a few minutes left. Let's do at least one more Pitkei Tshuva. So Yavni, you want to read to do it the brachot kodem nisuin?
Kodem nisuin. Whoa.
Oh wait, actually, no. Skip this one. Go to Umavarech. Which one? There was one more I wanted to do with him. I thought. He's copying a bunch of people here. Let's just skip this. Let's start with. We'll do the beginning of the Ezer Mekudash. At the bottom. Do you have the Ezer Mekudash at the bottom of your?
I do. Yeah.
Great. I looked him up and I can't remember who he is anymore. But it's but go for it. Ezer Mekudash Sif Aleph.
Right. Yeah. How does it begin? Oh, here it is. I found it. Sorry.
Odot.
Im ein yain matsui. אודות שתי כוסות בברכת המזון ושבע ברכות לא היה בביתי יין כי אם כוס אחד ועוד מעט. מה שאני נהוג. So he's saying that what happened, it happened once that I was doing Sheva Brachot in my house and I only had enough wine for 1 cup and a little bit, not for the 2 cups that we need.
Exactly. Yeah. So.
מה שאני נהוג בזה תמיד לברך על היין ברכת המזון דסעודה שלישית ולהניחו עד הבדלה. כמו שכתב המגזל,
מגן אברהם.
מגן אברהם, שמי שאינו נוהג בקביעות לברך על הכוס, הוא מזמן לפעמים בלי כוס, אין לו לשתות הכוס בברכת המזון.
Three more words.
רק להניחו להבדלה. What?
Yeah, 3 more words. You got it.
רק להניחו להבדלה.
Great.
And so in general, his practice is to make the bracha on the wine on Birkat Hamazon and to not drink it until Havdalah for Seudah Shlishit, and not to drink it until Havdalah. And then Magen Avraham says that one who doesn't have the practice of drinking should save it for Havdalah. Great.
Do you know the whole debate that's going on here in the background?
No.
So if you bring, right, so the whole thing is once, not necessarily when you finish Seudah Shlishit, but once you have Shkiyat Chama on Shabbat, you're not supposed to eat again until you do Havdalah. And so the whole question becomes, well, can you drink the kos of Birkat Hamazon? Because you've done Birkat Hamazon, you've ended your meal, it's after Shkiyat Chama, can you then drink the kos yain? And so there's a huge debate that shows up with like, is that really just part of the meal in some extent? And or is that something separate? And so the way that the Magen Avraham rules is that if you normally drink, like for every Birkat Hamazon, kos yain, you can do it. But if you don't, then you should just save that kos for after Havdalah. And this is actually a custom. I mean, a lot of people have this, as you see it all the time, where they'll make Birkat Hamazon over the kos on at Seudah Shlishit, and they'll put the kos aside for Havdalah. They'll cover it up, and then they'll come back and make Havdalah in that same cup. So, okay.
Thank you. ולא יניחה לי בזה לקח 2 כוסות דשחר. And it didn't seem right to me to use 2 cups of beer instead. ולהבדיל על היין, כי כשיש כוס יין לפנינו.
I keep going.
כי כשיש כוס יין לפנינו, אין נכון לסלקו לצד אחר ולברך על השחר דשעורים, ולזה לקחתי כוס ברכת המזון של יין. וכוס השני לקחתי של שיכר, כי אין קפידה בזה במה שאין שני הכוסות שוות. כמו שנוהגים שלא להקפיד עם כוס אחד גדול ואחד קטן. So what he did was, and so he didn't want to use two cups of beer because and then to do havdalah on the wine because the cup of wine was there for havdalah. So it didn't make sense to like leave that aside.
It's a superior thing to use for the mitzvah right now, which is Sheva Bracha.
Right. And so what am I going to ignore that I have it?
Yeah.
And so what he did was he used 1 cup of beer and 1 cup of wine for the Birkat Hamazon Sheva Brachot. Because there's no reason not to have unequal things for the Birkat Hamazon Sheva Brachot.
So.
וכן הוא yeah, is that the word? וכן הוא בזה, what?
Yeah, you're right. Go for it.
וכן הוא בזה, והכוס דיין שלפניי היה קטן, כי לא היה לי יין יותר, והכוס דשחר היה גדול, כי לא היה לפניי כוס כזה מצוי בנקל, וכיוון שנשתנה כוס השני לגריעותה, להיותו שחר עדיף ליתן עדיפותה שיהיה גדול. And so because he didn't have a lot of wine, he used a small cup of wine, and he didn't have another cup like that, he used a large cup of beer. And to equal them out somehow, is that what the last part was saying?
Well, so beer is an inferior drink, so you should have more beer to equal like a small cup of wine, right? That's
okay.
So even if they don't have to be Shavuot, he wants to get them as equal as possible. It sounds like he's justifying to himself this practice. So
for some reason.
Yeah.
Okay. מה שאין כן כשיין מצוי כל הצורך, ויש כמה כוסות לפניו, עדיף ליטול 2 כוסות שוות לגמרי, כדי שלא יהיה שייך כמעביר מלפניו דבר חשיב, ומברך על שאינו חשוב כל כך. And so like, but if you have plenty of wine and a selection of cups, you should really have 2 equal cups and use wine for both.
Exactly.
Because it's odd to put aside something more that's somehow more valuable or something and make a bracha on something that's less valuable. וכיוון לכוס דיין, גם שהוא קטן, חשוב יותר מדשחר, לזה עדיף יותר ליטול לברכת המזון את כוס דיין. And because wine is better than beer, even a small amount of wine is better than a large amount of beer, it's better to take the wine for the Birkat Hamazon.
Exactly.
As opposed to for the Sheva Brachot, because it's first, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe because it comes first. I wasn't quite sure why he decided that, but he did. So, but if you guys have time, let's finish up one more sentence here, and then we'll stop. So.
ואם כן בשישה ברכות נאמרות על דשחר ממילא, and therefore, by process of elimination, you're doing the Sheva Brachot on the Shesh Brachot on beer.
Yeah.
וצריכים לברך בורא פרי הגפן על היין, ואילו היה לפני יין הרבה, הייתי שותה הכוס לברכת המזון או רובו.
Yeah, the sentence keeps going. כי בזה מודה.
כי בזה מודה המגן אברהם שיש לשתות לפני הבדלה, וכמו שמי שתמיד מברך על הכוס, יש לו לשתות כוס לברכה.
Good. right? So he's saying, maybe I'll just do it just to finish this up. I mean, I know you got it, but he's saying, and the other thing is, even though it's after Shkiat Chama, and I really generally shouldn't drink this kos and save it for Havdalah, the Magen Avraham would agree that for Sheva Brachot, I should drink it, because that's as if I was somebody who regularly drinks, because I think behind this is, because it would be very weird if for Sheva Brachot, we then put aside the wine for Havdalah, right? Everyone always, when you're doing Sheva Brachot, everyone always drinks the wine. So, and always does alakos. So anyway, I found this, I don't know, hopefully it was like kind of just an interesting insight into like this actual thing that happened to him, right? Or happens to him. And like, how did he, like his entire mindset of going through like all these, questions here around this of what to decide. So, and also this whole thing about having, very little wine and a lot of shechar, which was also, I thought, important. So, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much. Have a great Shabbos. And
Great to learn together.
so, yeah, and I'll see everybody next week. So.